As interest increases in where our food comes from and how it's grown, more people going to the restaurant or grocery store might ask, what is the ethical choice? I'm Charlie Arnot with the Center for Food Integrity. Let's examine this important question. The Premier of China has a dream to provide each child enough milk every day. At the same time, we have an obesity problem in the United States. These are both legitimate social problems related to food. Unfortunately, we're not having the kind of productive discussion that leads to long-term solutions. The food editor at the LA Times put it this way: what we have are two camps deeply suspicious of one another, shouting past each other. We can do better. We have many food choices. You can buy groceries at Whole Foods, Walmart, or your local supermarket. Have lunch at McDonald's, Chipotle, or the Corner Cafe. But it seems there is a growing obsession with controversial foods versus controversy-free foods. Unfortunately, that's a polarizing position that hampers meaningful dialogue. Some suggest an easy solution is to roll the clock back to a simpler time. But is that the ethical choice? In 1950, the U.S. population was 154 million, and there were about 5.5 million farmers. One farmer fed roughly 30 people. By 2010, there are more than twice as many people, fewer than half as many farmers, but one farmer can feed about 155 people. If the number of farms and the level of productivity had remained constant since 1950, there would be no food for the equivalent of the 9 most populous states, 151 million people, or roughly half the current U.S. population. It's difficult to argue that would be the ethical choice. Consider this basic premise. The public has a right to expect farmers, food companies, restaurants, and grocery stores to act in a responsible manner, and those that don't should be held accountable. Renewed public interest in food is an opportunity for those in the food system to look in the mirror. If there are practices that can't be ethically defended or are inconsistent with consumer values, then the food system should take the lead in bringing those practices to an end. We must also do a better job engaging in a productive conversation about today's food and tell the story. Let's use a BLT and a glass of milk to tell the story of today's food system. We'll need to pick up several items from the grocery store. Let's start with a carton of milk. Like thousands of dairy farmers across the country, Stephanie Dykeshorn of Iowa is focused on the health and safety of her cows and the quality product that ends up in the grocery store. Compared to 1950, today's dairies produce 63% more milk with 58% fewer cows. Improving efficiency helps keep food affordable, but it does much more than that. Compared to 1944, each gallon of milk has a 63% smaller carbon footprint, takes 65% less water, and 90% less land. How about the main ingredient for our BLT? Kenny Brinker from Missouri is one of thousands of hog farmers who pride themselves on supplying safe, nutritious, affordable food. Compared to 1950, the U.S. produces 176% more pork per sow, and there are 44% fewer sows. That means every package of bacon today took less land and less water and has a smaller environmental footprint than in 1950. There are similar stories for the rest of the items that go into our meal, and these remarkable improvements are only part of the story. From 1960 to 2010, the land required to produce all the meat, milk, and eggs for every person in the United States declined by 2/3. Now think about that. If you live in a home or work in a business built since 1960, there's a pretty good chance it's on land that used to grow food. Without the ability to produce more food with fewer resources, more areas would be farmland instead of neighborhoods, forests, parks, and recreational areas. Surely these remarkable improvements mean we can meet the world's growing demand for food, right? Unfortunately, we're not even close. There is record-high food insecurity in the U.S. and growing challenges around the world. 14.7% of U.S. households were food insecure at some point in 2009, the highest rate in recent history. U.S. households seeking emergency help from food pantries rose 44% between 2007 and 2009. We have these problems despite spending a smaller percentage of our disposable income on food than any other country. Only a century ago, we spent half our income on food. Our economy is struggling today. Can you imagine what it would be like if we still spent half our income on food? Every day, 11 million people in the U.S. and 1 billion around the world go to bed without enough food. And by mid-century, the planet will be home to nearly 3 billion more people. That means we're adding 75 million more to the planet every year, or roughly the population of Iran. It's the equivalent of adding another Los Angeles and Chicago to the planet every month. That means we have to double food production by 2050. So how do we close the gap? Norman Borlaug, the father of the Green Revolution, said, "We have the technology to feed 10 billion people sustainably. The question is whether farmers and ranchers will be allowed to use it." We are currently increasing agriculture productivity at 1.4% per year. Not bad, but not nearly enough. If we're going to double food production and freeze agriculture's environmental footprint, we need to increase the rate of productivity by 25% to 1.75% per year, and the greatest improvement needs to happen in the next 20 years. If we can't close that gap and significantly increase food production by 2050, there will be no food for 300 million people, nearly the current U.S. population. It may be hard to believe, but we actually have to produce more food by the end of this century than we have in the last 10,000 years combined. Now, hunger is a complex problem, and simply growing more food alone won't solve it. We need to improve access, education, transportation, and more. But here is one fundamental truth. If supplies don't keep up with demand, prices will continue to increase, and those who will be impacted the most can afford it the least. So let's put the magnitude of this challenge into perspective. On September 11, 2001, the world mourned the senseless deaths of more than 2,800 people, and an angry nation wondered how it could happen in the U.S. On March 11, 2011, a massive earthquake triggered a tsunami that killed more than 20,000 people in Japan. According to the United Nations, more than 25,000 people, more than half of them children, die every day from hunger and malnutrition. That's more than all who died in Japan, and more than 9 times the number of people who perished on 9/11. Providing enough food for people around the world should be a moral imperative, but it's also a matter of national security. Meeting basic human needs is the foundation for hope and progress. When people lose hope, they have nothing left to lose. So where's the public outrage? Have we become numb to this tragedy because so many people die from hunger every day? If so, what does that say about our society, especially when we have the power to change it? We all want to do the right thing, but it's not always easy to know what's right when it comes to food. So how can you be better prepared to answer the question, what is the ethical choice? There are 3 things each of us can do to answer that question. Engage others in an informed dialogue about food issues and the need to produce more using less. Support food choice and understand that safe, nutritious, and affordable food can come from a variety of different types of farms, grocery stores, and restaurants. And regardless of the food you choose, you have the right to expect everyone in the food system to act responsibly. Celebrate the choices you make for you and your family, but also consider the consequences of policy or market decisions that could limit our ability to grow and supply more food. Finally, support responsible food production systems that allow us to grow the food we need using fewer resources to meet the ever-increasing global demand for food. Farmers have always been creative and resourceful. If we give them the tools and opportunity, they will find a way to meet the incredible demand for safe, nutritious, affordable food. And isn't that the ethical choice for people, animals, and the planet? I'm Charlie Arnot with the Center for Food Integrity. If you'd like to learn more about who we are and what we do, visit foodintegrity.org. If you have questions about today's food system and you would like answers from academic experts from leading universities across the country, please visit bestfoodfacts.org.